He pressed the crease in his new suit, staring at his reflection. He saw a man destined for greatness, held back only by the simple, plain woman in the kitchen behind him. His wife, Emily, was a quiet librarian, a woman of simple tastes and simpler ambitions. He was going to Newport, to the glittering world of the elite, and he was going alone. He told her she wouldn't fit in. What he didn't know is that the exclusive world he was desperate to enter, it didn't just know his wife, it belonged to her. And the yacht everyone was dying to get on. It was just her family's summer boat. Liam straightened his Breitling watch, a self-satisfied glint in his eye. It was an entry-level model, but it was real, and in the sterile beige and white world of his upper-middle-class apartment, it felt like a crown. He was a senior analyst at Sterling Price Investments, a shark in a tank of minnows, and he was circling something big. In the kitchen, Emily hummed softly, wiping down a counter. She wore a faded Gap cardigan over a simple t-shirt. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple, functional ponytail. She was in every sense of the word ordinary. They had met 5 years ago. He had been a charming, ambitious junior associate. She had been a shy, bookish grad student working at the university library. He'd seen her as sweet, stable, and most importantly, uncomplicated. She would be the perfect supportive backdrop for his meteoric rise. But 5 years on her simplicity had begun to grate on him. It felt less like a backdrop and more like an anchor. "Are you still wearing that sweater, Emily?" he asked, his voice dripping with a practiced, weary patience. "It has pills all over the sleeve." Emily stopped wiping and looked down. "Oh, I hadn't noticed. It's comfortable." "Comfort isn't going to get us invited to the Sterling summer party, is it?" he scoffed, walking over to the espresso machine, a juror, his one real splurge. "Life is about presentation, darling. You should know that by now." I like my work at the city library," she said quietly, turning back to the sink. "The children's reading program is doing really well." Liam sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "The library? Yes, of course. How's that revolutionary new cataloguing system coming along?" He didn't wait for an answer. "Look this weekend. The Coastal Legacy Invitational in Newport. It's a huge deal. Mr. Sterling is going to be there. His daughter Serafina is hosting the pre-gala at Marble House." Emily's hands stilled in the soapy water. "Newport? That sounds lovely. I haven't been since I was She paused. "A long time ago." Liam took a sip of his espresso, the bitterness sharp on his tongue. "Ah, about that. This isn't really a +1 kind of thing. It's high-level networking, Emily. We're talking about the partners' board members, people who decide the future of the firm. You'd be bored stiff." The silence that followed was heavier than her usual quiet. "You don't want me to come?" she stated. It wasn't a question. "It's not that I don't want you to come," he lied smoothly, a skill he'd perfected at the office. "It's just that I need to be on. I need to focus, to move and shake. I can't be worried about whether my wife is having a good time or if she's managed to spill canapes on a hedge fund manager. You understand, don't you? It's for us. For our future." Emily dried her hands slowly on a dish towel. She looked at him, her grey eyes unreadable for a moment. He'd always found her gaze a bit empty. Now it just looked tired. "Yes, Liam," she said, her voice flat. "I understand. For our future. You should pack your new Tom Ford suit. The blue one." He brightened. "Exactly. See you get it." He hadn't even told her he'd bought it, charging it to a card she didn't know he had. He'd told her he was getting his old suit tailored. "That's my girl. You just hold down the fort here. Maybe buy yourself a new sweater or something." He kissed her on the forehead, a sterile, dismissive gesture, and grabbed his briefcase. As he walked out the door, he was already mentally composing his first text to Serafina Sterling. "On my way. Can't wait to see you. L." He was so focused on the future he was building that he never once looked back. He didn't see Emily stand perfectly still in the kitchen, her back straight, her hands clenched by her sides. He didn't see the single cold tear that traced a path down her cheek. And he certainly didn't hear the first quiet words she spoke to the empty room after the lock clicked shut. "He's going," she whispered. "He's really going to do it." She walked into their small home office, past the shelves of his unread Wall Street Journal compilations and leadership trophies. She sat at her simple, unassuming desk and opened a drawer. Tucked beneath a stack of library pamphlets was a slim black satellite phone. She pressed one button. It rang twice. A crisp, British-accented voice answered instantly. "Julian, we were wondering if you'd be calling." Emily's entire demeanor shifted. The slump in her shoulders vanished. Her voice, when she spoke, was no longer the soft, mousy hum of a librarian. It was clear, aristocratic, and sharp as surgical steel. "Julian," she said, "he's attending the invitational. He believes I'm unsuitable to accompany him." There was a pause on the other end. "The arrogance is breathtaking. Madam, what are your instructions? I'm done hiding." Emily said, her voice trembling, not with fear, but with a cold, rising fury. "I'm done being ordinary. He wants to see the world of the elite fine. Prepare the vanguard. Have the Armani Privé ready. And Julian, yes, madame, tell father I'm coming home, and I'm bringing a problem." Newport, Rhode Island, was a different universe. It wasn't just wealthy. It was historic wealth, a place where families didn't talk about their money, because they assumed everyone else already knew. Liam, driving his leased BMW 3 Series, felt a surge of adrenaline as he passed the stone gates of the opulent Gilded Age mansions lining Bellevue Avenue. This was where he belonged. The pre-gala was at Marble House, a palace of white marble built by the Vanderbilts. Liam handed his keys to the valet, with a flourish adjusting the cuffs of his Tom Ford suit. He felt like a king. He found Serafina Sterling by the grand staircase, holding court. She was everything Emily was, not tall, blonde, draped in a glittering Chanel gown, with a laugh that was both a melody and a command. Her father, Harrison Sterling, stood beside her, a portly man, with a shark's smile. "Liam, you made it," Serafina trilled, detaching herself from a congressman and gliding over. She kissed his cheek, letting her lips linger just a fraction too long. Her perfume was Baccarat Rouge 540. It smelled like burnt sugar and money. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Serafina," Liam said, his voice smooth as honey. He kissed her hand. "You look breathtaking. The Vanderbilts themselves would be jealous." "Flatterer," she laughed. "Daddy, you remember Liam from the acquisitions team?" Harrison Sterling grunted, giving Liam a firm, assessing handshake. "Liam. Good. You're the one with the numbers on the new tech merger. Sharp." "Thank you, sir. I believe we're poised for a major Q4 win," Liam said, slipping into his boardroom persona. "Good, good. Business tomorrow," Harrison said, gesturing with his champagne flute. "Tonight we network. See that man over there? That's the comptroller for the state of New York. Go say hello. But don't mention the new tax bill. For the next 2 hours, Liam was in heaven. He schmoozed, he charmed, he listened intently, he dropped strategic compliments. He was a natural. Serafina stayed near him, her hand often finding the small of his back, a silent proprietary signal to the rest of the room. Later they found a moment alone on the vast stone terrace overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The moon painted a silver stripe on the dark water. "You're very good at this, Liam," Serafina murmured, leaning against him. "I know this world," he said, breathing in her expensive scent. "This is where I'm meant to be, not stuck in, well, you know." Serafina's eyes sharpened. "You mean with your little mouse, the librarian?" Liam stiffened. He hadn't told her that much. "We've discussed this. It's complicated. She's a good woman, just not on this level. She doesn't have the drive, the ambition. Her world is small. And yours isn't," Serafina finished for him. "My father is looking for a new vice president of global strategy. It's a big step. It comes with a new office, a new apartment in the Tribeca high-rise, and new expectations." Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. This was it. Expectations. He values loyalty, strength. He hates weakness. He hates messy entanglements, she said, tracing the lapel of his suit. He needs to know his VPs have the right partners. Partners who reflect the firm's values. The implication hung in the salty air between them. Get rid of the wife. "My entanglement," Liam said, choosing his words carefully, "is not messy. It's a simple procedure, a matter of timing. After I secure my new position, I'll be streamlining my personal portfolio." Serafina smiled, a slow, predatory curving of her lips. "Good, because tomorrow is the main event, the invitational, and everyone who is anyone will be there." "I heard a rumor," Liam said, leaning in, "that the Vanguard is in port." Serafina's eyes widened. "Don't be ridiculous. The Vanguard Marcus Thorne's yacht. It's a ghost. It's never seen at public events. They say it's more secure than the Pentagon. My sources say it's here." Liam bluffed, having overheard a valet. "And I'm going to get us on board?" Serafina looked at him, truly impressed. "Get me on Marcus Thorne's yacht, Liam, if you could pull that off. Daddy wouldn't just make you VP. He'd make you his heir apparent." Liam grinned, feeling invincible. "Consider it done." He pulled out his phone to check his messages. One text from Emily sent hours ago. "Have a good time. I'm going to visit an old friend for a couple of days. The house will be empty when you get back." He scoffed. "An old friend? Probably some other librarian." He typed a quick reply. "Sounds nice. Enjoy your book club. Busy here. Don't wait up." He put the phone away, silencing it. He didn't have time for the small, ordinary world. He was in Newport, on the verge of claiming his destiny. He turned back to Serafina, and under the Gilded Age moonlight, he kissed her. It tasted like champagne and victory. While Liam was sealing his fate on a moonlit terrace, Emily was in motion. The old friend she was visiting was in fact Julian. After her call, a black unlisted Maybach S680 had pulled silently into the alley behind her apartment building. She had exited through the service entrance, carrying a single simple duffel bag. Now she was in a Gulfstream G700, a private jet so exclusive it made the Sterling Price Company jet look like a regional hopper. She had showered and changed. The faded cardigan was gone, replaced by a simple but exquisitely cut Loro Piana cashmere turtleneck and silk trousers. Her hair was down, brushed to a shining chestnut waterfall. She wore no makeup, but her face, now free of its practiced submissive mask, was striking. She had the sharp, aristocratic bones and clear, intelligent eyes of her father. "We will be landing at Newport State Airport in 20 minutes, madame," Julian said. He was a man in his late 50s, impeccably dressed with the quiet competence of a man who managed a global empire from the shadows. He was technically the CEO of the Thorne family office, but his primary role had always been her protector. "Thank you, Julian. Is he angry?" Emily asked, staring out the window at the clouds below. "Angry?" Julian permitted himself a small, dry smile. "Mr. Thorne is disappointed," is the word he used. He is disappointed that a man could be in possession of a priceless jewel and mistake it for common quartz. He is furious that this man has caused you a moment's pain. "I caused my own pain," Emily said bitterly. "I was the one who wanted to live a normal life. I was the one who met him at the library, introduced myself as Emily Brown, and let him believe I was just me. I thought he loved me, Julian. The real me, the person who loves dusty books and quiet mornings." "He may have once," Julian said gently. "But a man like Liam, he is not built to love a person. He is built to love what a person can get him. You were an asset, and when he decided you were a non-performing asset, he sought to liquidate." Emily winced at the cold financial terms, but she nodded. "He's been seeing Serafina Sterling for at least 6 months. I found the Chanel receipts, the hotel reservations at the St. Regis." "We know," Julian said. "The security team's report has been on your father's desk for 3 months. He was waiting for your word." You knew?" Emily felt a flush of shame. "Mr. Thorne respects your privacy and your choices, Emily, even the ones he disagrees with. He would not intervene in your marriage. But he will protect his family, and you, madame, are his family. Liam, however, is not." The jet began its smooth descent. "There's something else," Julian said, pulling a tablet from his briefcase. "As you requested, we ran a deep audit on Liam's accounts at Sterling Price, as well as his personal finances. And he's not just an adulterer, madam. He's a thief." Julian's voice was cold. "He's been using a shell corporation in Delaware to skim from the firm's expense accounts, small amounts at first, but in the last 6 months, as his friendship with Miss Sterling has escalated, so has the theft. He's funneled over $800,000. Emily felt sick. It wasn't just betrayal. It was all sordid. He's been stealing from Harrison Sterling, yes, which frankly is a case of one shark eating another. But more importantly, on the tech merger he's spearheading, he's been accessing proprietary data and attempting to sell it to a rival firm. He's not just a cheat, he's an industrial spy." Emily closed her eyes. The quiet, sweet man she thought she'd married was a complete fabrication, a ghost. The ambitious, dismissive husband he'd become was the real man. "What he's doing is not only grounds for termination," Julian said. "It's grounds for a federal indictment, wire fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage." "I see." Emily opened her eyes, and the last trace of the meek librarian was gone. In her grey eyes a storm was gathering. "So when I see him tomorrow, I won't be ending a marriage. I'll be streamlining a personal portfolio." She used Liam's own words, and they tasted like ash. "Precisely," Julian said. The jet touched down so smoothly she barely felt it. A black Rolls-Royce Cullinan was waiting on the tarmac, its engine purring. "Your father is waiting for you on the Vanguard," Julian said, opening the door for her. "He cancelled his meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister to be here." Emily stepped out into the cool, salty night air. "Good, because tomorrow when Liam tries to get on that yacht, I want to be the one to tell him no." "Oh." Julian smiled, a thin, dangerous expression. "I think we can do much, much better than that." Liam woke up in his Hotel Viking suite feeling like a god. His head throbbed from the champagne, but it was a celebratory ache. Serafina had left only an hour ago, with a promise to save him a seat at the main event. He showered, ordered a $60 room service breakfast, and reviewed his plan. Getting on the Vanguard was the key. He'd spent the morning making calls using every bit of leverage and bluff he had. He'd finally gotten a name: Julian Alistair Marcus Thorns, gatekeeper. He'd tried calling Alistair's office, only to be met by a polite but impenetrable assistant who informed him that Mr. Thorns' schedule is not public. Fine. If he couldn't get in the front door, he'd find a side one. He still had his bluff. Serafina and her father didn't need to know how he got them on, just that he did. He'd show up, create a scene, drop names, and act like he belonged. In his experience, 90% of security was just a confidence game. He dressed with meticulous care. Not the tux from last night, but a custom-tailored linen suit, a pale blue shirt, and no tie. The perfect yachting elite look. He checked his Breitling 11:00 a.m. Time to go. He met Harrison and Serafina at the entrance to the invitational section of the marina. The area was cordoned off with velvet ropes and guarded by stone-faced men in crisp blue blazers. The air was thick with the smell of salt money and entitlement. "There he is," Serafina trilled, kissing him boldly. "Daddy Liam is going to get us onto the Vanguard. Can you believe it?" Harrison grunted, though his eyes were alight with greed. "Thorn's boat. I've been trying to get a meeting with him for a decade. If you pull this off, son, that VP office is just the start." "Follow me," Liam said, projecting an aura of absolute certainty. They walked down the gleaming mahogany docks past yachts that were themselves the size of mansions, but they were all dinghies compared to what lay at the end of Pier A. The Vanguard. It wasn't a yacht. It was a floating fortress. 350 feet of sleek obsidian grey hull with teak decks and smoked glass windows. A helicopter, a Sikorsky S-76, was perched on the rear deck. There was no branding, no flag of convenience. Just a quiet, terrifying statement of power. A single gangway led up to the deck, guarded by 2 men. They weren't the blazer-clad event security. They were tall, fit, and wore dark, tailored suits with clear earpieces. They looked less like deckhands and more like Secret Service. "See?" Serafina whispered, her confidence wavering. "I told you. It's impossible." "Watch me," Liam said. He strode forward, his chest out. "Good morning, gentlemen," Liam said, flashing his most charming smile. Liam. He didn't use his last name, Harrison Sterling, and Serafina Sterling. "We're here to see Mr. Thorn." The first guard, a man with a shaved head and a jaw like a block of granite, didn't even look at him. He spoke into his wrist. "Mr. Alistair, we have a Liam, a Sterling, and a Sterling at the checkpoint. Unscheduled." A voice crackled in his earpiece, too low to hear. The guard looked up, his eyes flat and void. "I'm sorry, sir. Your names are not on the list." "There must be a mistake," Liam said, his smile tightening. "I'm a personal guest of Emily. She's expecting us." He threw his wife's name out as a wild card, a bluff. The guard's expression didn't flicker. "There is no one by that name on our manifest." "Now see here," Harrison Sterling blustered, stepping forward. "I am Harrison Sterling of Sterling Price Investments. I demand to speak to Marcus Thorne." "No one speaks to Mr. Thorne uninvited, sir," the second guard said, resting a hand calmly on the small of his back, where his suit jacket bulged slightly. Liam felt a bead of sweat trickle down his collar. This was not going as planned. His confidence was failing. "Liam," Serafina hissed, her voice sharp with embarrassment. "You said you had this handled. You're making us look like fools." Just wait," Liam stammered. Let me call my contact." He fumbled for his phone, his hands suddenly clumsy. He had no one to call. He was going to have to bribe them. He pulled out his wallet, fishing for $100, 1,000. "Perhaps this will clear up the confusion," Liam said, holding out a fan of $100 bills. The first guard looked at the money. He looked at Liam's face, and for the first time he smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Sir," the guard said, "that might buy you a lobster roll on the boardwalk. Now please step away from the gangway. You are creating a disturbance." "A disturbance?" Harrison roared. "I'll have your job. I'll have this whole... Is there a problem here, gentlemen?" The voice was new. It was quiet, British, and cut through the bluster like a diamond blade. They all turned. A man in an immaculate dark grey Brioni suit was standing at the top of the gangway. It was Julian Allister. Liam recognized him instantly from his Google search. This was his chance. "Mr. Allister," Liam exclaimed, pushing forward. "Thank God. A misunderstanding. I'm Liam. This is Harrison and Serafina Sterling. We're here for the viewing. Please tell your men to let us pass." Julian walked slowly down the gangway. He stopped one step above Liam, forcing the younger man to look up at him. Julian's eyes were a deep Arctic blue. "Mr. Liam," Julian paused as if searching for a last name. "Ah, yes. The analyst from Sterling Price, the one with the creative expense reports." Liam froze. The blood drained from his face. I don't know what you're talking about." "I'm sure you don't," Julian said coolly. He looked past Liam, his gaze falling on Harrison Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, you are trespassing. Your presence and the presence of your associate is not welcome." "Now you see here," Harrison bellowed. "Who in the hell do you think you are talking to me like that? We are guests." "No," Julian said. "You are not." "Liam!" Serafina shrieked, her face turning an ugly shade of red. "Fix this! You promised! Emily!" Liam shouted desperately, playing his last card. "I am married to Emily Thorne. She's his daughter. Tell him." Julian's thin smile returned. "Mr. Thorne has no daughter named Emily Thorne. You are mistaken." Liam's world tilted. A lie. Had Emily been lying to him all this time? Was this whole thing a... He is, however, expecting his daughter. Julian looked back up at the yacht, and her timing, as always, is impeccable. A black Rolls-Royce Cullinan one Liam had seen on the tarmac just last night, he now realized had pulled up silently behind the security checkpoint. The security team snapped to attention, forming two lines. The rear door of the Rolls-Royce opened. A man stepped out first. He was in his mid-60s, with a shock of silver hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He wore a simple dark blue polo shirt and linen trousers, but he radiated an power so potent it was almost a physical force. He was unmistakably Marcus Thorne. Harrison Sterling stopped yelling. He looked as if he'd been punched in the gut. Mr. Thorne, he stammered. Marcus Thorne ignored him. He ignored them all. He simply turned and extended his hand to the passenger still inside the car. "Are you ready, my dear?" His voice, a deep baritone, carried easily on the breeze. A woman's hand took his. It was slender, pale, and adorned with a simple, blindingly large, cushion-cut diamond ring that Liam had never seen before. A moment later she emerged. She stepped out of the Rolls-Royce and into the sunlight, and Liam's mind simply broke. It was Emily. But it was not Emily. This was not the mousy librarian in the pilled cardigan. This woman was a supernova. Her hair was a rich, shining cascade of chestnut waves. She wore a sophisticated cream-colored St. John knit dress that hugged her body and a pair of Manolo Blahnik heels. Around her neck was a simple, elegant Graf diamond pendant. Her face was the same, but the expression was one Liam had never seen. It was a look of complete, effortless, and devastating authority. She was, in a word, magnificent. "Emily," Liam breathed. It was a question, a plea, a gasp. Serafina, standing next to him, let out a sound of pure, venomous disbelief. "Liam, who? Who is that? Is that your wife?" She laughed, a high, nervous sound. "What is this, a costume? Did she follow you here? How pathetic." Emily's gaze, cool and appraising, swept over the group. It lingered for a second on Harrison. Sterling dismissed Serafina with a glance, and then finally it settled on her husband. She looked at him. She saw his fake tan, his rented suit, his slack-jawed expression of utter shock. She saw Serafina's hand, which was still clutching his arm possessively. She didn't look angry. She didn't look hurt. She looked, to Liam's horror, bored. She turned away from him and smiled at the billionaire beside her. "Shall we, father?" she asked. The word hit the dock like a bomb. "Father." Liam's legs gave out. He physically stumbled, catching himself on the velvet rope. Father." Harrison Sterling went white as a sheet. "Thorne, your daughter," Marcus Thorne, who had not yet acknowledged any of them, put a protective, loving arm around Emily's waist. He then turned his head, and his eyes, as cold and deep as the ocean behind him, pinned Liam to the spot. "So." Marcus Thorne's voice was quiet, but it vibrated with absolute power. "This is the man who finds my daughter ordinary. This is the man who told her she wouldn't fit in." Liam couldn't breathe. The air had been stolen from his lungs. "Emily? You work at a library." "Yes, I do," Emily said. Her voice. It was her voice, the one from the phone call. The voice of command. "I chair the board of the Thorne Family Philanthropic Foundation. Our largest project is the Global Literacy Initiative. We've funded and built over 500 libraries worldwide. I was quite literally at the library. I just failed to specify which one." She took a step toward him. "You're right, Liam. I am a woman of simple tastes. I wanted a simple life. I wanted to be loved for me Emily Brown, my mother's name. I wanted a partner, a man who loved me, for my mind, not my inheritance." Her eyes flicked to Serafina. "But it seems I chose a man who is only interested in what he can acquire. And when he found out I was a non-performing asset, he went looking for a hostile takeover." Serafina, finally understanding the catastrophic, career-ending social suicide bomb, She had just strapped herself to recoiled from Liam as if he were radioactive. "Liam!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. You lied to me. You told me she was a nobody. You're married to Emily Thorne." Harrison Sterling looked like he was about to have a coronary. He rounded on Liam. You idiot. You absolute categorical fool. You were cheating on Marcus Thorne's daughter with mine. You've ruined me. You've ruined this firm. No. Wait. Liam panicked, reaching for Emily. "Emily. Baby, please, it's not what it looks like. I love you, I always have. This was just networking." Emily didn't flinch. She just looked at his outstretched hand with utter disgust. "Networking." She repeated the word, an icicle. "Is that what you call it? Or is it streamlining your personal portfolio?" Liam's hand dropped. He had been found out, completely. "But it's so much worse than that. Isn't it, Liam?" Emily continued, her voice rising, drawing the attention of other nearby yacht owners. "You didn't just cheat on me. You're a thief." "A thief?" Liam stammered, his mind racing. "What are you talking about? I've never stolen anything in my life." "Emily, you're upset, I get it, but don't make up. $827,400, Julian Alastair said, stepping forward. He was holding a slim leather-bound file. "Funneled from Sterling Price expense accounts into a shell corporation, LGH Solutions, registered in Delaware, a corporation for which you are the sole signatory." Harrison Sterling's head snapped toward Liam. "LGH? My God. That's been flagged by audit for months." And then, Julian continued, his voice relentless, "There is the matter of the Apex Tech merger. You used your privileged access to download the full due diligence packet. My team tracked your digital footprint. You've been attempting to sell that data to Apex's primary competitor, Cygnus Dynamics, for a personal payout of $5 million. If Harrison Sterling had been white before, he was now translucent. "Industrial. Espionage. You worm. You didn't just cheat on a Thorne, you did it while stealing from me." "Mr. Sterling." Marcus Thorne finally spoke, his voice a low growl. "Your firm's catastrophic lack of security and your daughter's appalling lack of judgment in cavorting with this creature has made you a liability. As of this morning, the Thorne Consolidated Fund has divested its entire $2.2 billion stake in Sterling Price. I suggest you check your stock ticker. It's going to be a difficult Monday." Harrison grabbed his phone. His thumb swiped frantically. He saw the after-hours trading alert. The stock was in free fall. It was a complete wipeout. You're ruined," Serafina whispered, staring at Liam, her face a mask of horror. You ruined my father." "Emily." Liam was on his knees now, a desperate, broken man. He grabbed the hem of her dress. "Emily, please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I love you, I swear I love you, it was a mistake. Don't do this." Emily looked down at the man sobbing at her feet. The man who had criticized her clothes, mocked her job, and dismissed her as simple. The man who had lied to her every single day of their marriage. She pulled her dress from his grasp, her face cold as marble. "You're right about one thing, Liam," she said. "You didn't know. You never bothered to know me at all. You saw a quiet woman, and you assumed she was weak. You saw a simple life, and you assumed it was a small one." She bent down slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper only he could hear. "You were sleeping next to the single most powerful heiress on this continent, and you traded her for a socialite. You were given the keys to a kingdom, and you chose instead to steal the petty cash from the till. You are not a shark, Liam. You're just a bottom feeder. And you're done." She stood up. "Julian," she said, her voice ringing out in the clear air. "Ensure Mr. Sterling, Miss Sterling, and him are removed from the premises. They are no longer welcome in Newport." "With pleasure, madam." The security guards stepped forward. They didn't touch Emily or her family. They moved past them, grabbing Liam by the arms. "No, Emily! Emily!" he screamed, his rented suit tearing as he struggled. "Get your hands off me!" Harrison Sterling bellowed, but another guard was already firmly escorting him, and a sobbing Serafina back down the dock. Emily didn't watch. She had already turned her back. Marcus Thorne put his arm around his daughter's shoulder and guided her up the gangway. "Welcome home, Emily." "It's good to be home, Father," she whispered. Liam was dragged, kicking and screaming, down the dock, past the rows of billionaires and socialites, who were now all watching him, their faces a mixture of pity and contempt. He was a nobody. Worse than a nobody, he was a fool. The last thing he saw before he was thrown out onto the street was Emily. She was standing on the aft deck of the Vanguard, a glass of champagne in her hand, looking out at the ocean. She didn't look back. Not once. The super yacht's horn sounded a low, powerful blast as it prepared to detach from the dock and sail away, leaving him in its wake. The fallout was not just immediate. It was biblical. Before the Vanguard had even cleared the Newport harbor, the story was everywhere. It wasn't just gossip. It was a financial earthquake. Forbes and the Wall Street Journal had competing headlines. "Sterling price in freefall after Thorne divestment," and "The billion-dollar betrayal." Marcus Thorne's secret heiress revealed. Harrison Sterling's firm was eviscerated. The stock cratered by 80% before the SEC halted trading. He was facing shareholder lawsuits that would strip him of everything he had. Serafina, once the queen of the social scene, became a pariah overnight. Her friends wouldn't take her calls. Vogue pulled her upcoming feature. She was in the language of her world, cancelled. But for Liam, the reckoning was far more personal. He was arrested at the Hotel Viking before he'd even finished packing. The police didn't knock. They kicked the door in. The charges filed by both Sterling Price in a desperate bid to distance themselves and the U.S. Attorney's office were read out in the hallway. 12 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of embezzlement, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit corporate espionage. His new Amex card was declined. His secret bank account in Delaware was frozen. He had to use a public defender. He tried to call Emily from his one phone call. The number was, of course, disconnected. He sat in a cold, concrete cell, the smell of bleach and despair filling his lungs. He kept replaying the scene on the dock. The way she had looked, the power, the coldness. It wasn't just that he had lost her. It was the horrifying realization that he had never even known her. His entire marriage had been a test of his character, his loyalty, his love, and he had failed on every conceivable level. He thought back to all the little things. The community college she'd gone to, which he now realized was a casual reference to Stanford, where she'd gotten her MBA. The old family friend, she'd mentioned Julian, who was one of the most powerful financial managers in the world. The simple jewelry she wore, which he now understood was likely antique, priceless, and worn for sentiment, not for show. He had been a fool, a blind, arrogant, greedy fool. He'd had a winning lottery ticket in his hand for 5 years and had thrown it away because he was too busy trying to steal a scratch off. The divorce papers arrived 2 days later, delivered by a high-powered attorney from a white shoe law firm. There was no negotiation. He was charged with adultery and financial malfeasance against his own marital estate. He would get nothing, less than nothing. His legal fees for the criminal trial would ensure he was in debt for the rest of his life. The trial was short. The evidence meticulously compiled by Julian's team was airtight. The digital footprint, the bank transfers, the saved texts to Serafina, promising to ditch the simpleton wife as soon as he got his promotion. The judge, a woman who seemed to have a particular distaste for men who betrayed their wives, made an example of him. "You had everything," she said, her voice echoing in the courtroom. "A wife who by all accounts was loyal and loving. A good job, a bright future, and you threw it all away out of pure, unadulterated greed. You are not just a criminal, Mr. Liam. You are a man of profound moral emptiness." He was sentenced to 7 years in a federal minimum security prison. As he was led out in handcuffs, he saw a copy of a magazine on a reporter's lap. It was the new Forbes. The cover wasn't of his downfall. It was of her. A stunning professional photograph of Emily Thorne standing in a field in a developing country, surrounded by smiling children. The headline, "The Quiet Billionaire, Emily Thorne's $10 plan to educate the world." She hadn't just taken back her name. She had taken back her life. And in doing so, she had utterly and completely erased his. 1 year later. The Vanguard cut a silent silver line through the impossible cobalt of the Mediterranean Sea. The sun was a melting ball of orange, bleeding into the horizon off the coast of Sardinia. On the aft deck, Emily stood alone, leaning against the teak railing. She was not in a couture gown. She wore a simple cream Ecuadorian cotton shirt and linen trousers, her hair pulled back into the same functional simple ponytail she had always favored. To a passing glance, she was the same woman who had wiped counters and hummed in a small beige apartment. But she was not the same. She would never be the same. The hesitation was gone. The practiced mask of meekness had been burned away in the fire of her husband's trial and the public glare that followed. She had been on magazine covers in boardrooms and on podiums in developing nations. She wore her identity now not as a burden to be hidden, but as a tool to be wielded. The quiet was still part of her, but it was no longer the quiet of a mouse. It was the quiet of the ocean's deep. "You'll stare a hole in that sunset, my dear." Marcus Thorne walked onto the deck, holding 2 tall glasses of iced tea, lemon slices clinking against the glass. He handed one to her, his eyes so like hers, crinkling at the corners. He, too, was in simple attire. The truly powerful she had learned never needed to advertise. "I was just thinking, Father," she said, her voice carrying easily on the warm breeze. "About him?" Marcus asked. His voice was gentle, but with a hard edge like velvet laid over granite. "He's not worth the space in your thoughts, Emily." "Not about him precisely," Emily corrected, turning to face the water. "I was thinking about me, the woman I was. I was so terrified of this." She motioned around her at the floating palace, the invisible, ever-present security, the weight of the name Thorne. "I was so afraid it would poison any chance at real love, that no one would ever see me, just the inheritance." She took a sip. "So I ran. I hid inside a simple life, and in my desperate attempt to avoid a man who would only want me for my money, I attracted the only thing worse, a man who despised me for not having it. Marcus was silent for a long moment, watching his daughter. "You gave him a rare gift, Emily," he said finally, his voice rumbling with pride. "You gave him the chance to love you for your character alone. You gave him a test without either of you ever knowing it was a test. He saw a priceless diamond lying on the sand, and because it wasn't in a velvet box, he declared it to be common glass and threw it away. That is a failure of his vision, not of your worth." He smiled a rare, full smile. He was a man of shallow appetites. He wanted a trophy. He just had no idea the one he had was the grand prize. He was looking for glitter, and he couldn't recognize gold. A third figure approached, as silent as a shadow. It was Julian, tablet in hand. "Madame," he said, his voice the epitome of professional calm, "your 10 o'clock with the Ghanaian Minister of Education is confirmed, and as you requested the final update on the associated parties." Emily straightened her focus, shifting instantly from reflective to decisive. "Go ahead, Julian." Liam's first parole hearing was denied as expected. Our legal observers noted he seemed unwell. He will serve his full 7-year term. Harrison Sterling's final appeal against the firm's bankruptcy was rejected. The bank has seized his last remaining property, the condo in Palm Beach. He is, I'm told, living with his sister in Ohio. "And Serafina?" Emily asked, her voice devoid of malice, purely curious. A flicker of something, perhaps distaste, crossed Julian's face. After a failed attempt to rebrand as a lifestyle influencer in Dubai, Miss Sterling was last seen auditioning for a C-list reality television show called Billionaire Bachelorettes. She was not cast. A simple, pathetic end. A life built on presentation collapsing when the presentation was no longer welcome. Emily nodded, a small, sad sigh escaping her. The sheer ugly waste of it all. She turned her focus to what mattered. "And the community center in Montana, the one I funded with the proceeds from the apartment." She had sold the home she and Liam had shared, and every penny of her half had gone into a new foundation. Julian permitted himself a small, genuine smile. The Emily Thorne Literacy Center is fully operational. It's serving over 300 families in the region. The governor sends his personal thanks and invites you to the formal opening. "I'll be there," Emily said. "Thank you, Julian." He bowed slightly and disappeared. Marcus Thorne put his arm around his daughter's shoulder. "You took the rubble of his betrayal and you built a library. You didn't just take back your name, Emily. You elevated it. You are not just my legacy. You're better than I am. I built an empire on acquiring. You're building one on giving back." Emily leaned her head on her father's shoulder, closing her eyes as the last sliver of sun vanished, leaving the sky a deep, peaceful purple. She was whole. Thousands of miles away, the same sunset was invisible. A loud, clanging bell signaled lights out. Liam sat on the edge of a thin, vinyl-covered mattress in a cell that smelled of stale sweat and industrial bleach. He was thinner, paler, his Breitling watch long gone, replaced by a raw red mark on his wrist that had faded months ago. The arrogance in his eyes was gone, hollowed out, and replaced by a dull, constant thrum of humiliation. Taped to the grey concrete wall above his small metal desk, pasted in from a contraband magazine, was a picture. It was the Forbes cover. Her, Emily. Not in a gown, but in a simple blue button-down shirt, standing in a field, smiling at a child who was holding a book. Her hair was in a ponytail. She looked happy. She looked powerful. She looked, he realized, with a sickening lurch, exactly as she had looked when she was making him coffee. The power had always been there. He just hadn't been able to see it. His cellmate, a disgraced accountant, was already asleep. In the dark, Liam stared at the image. He remembered her words. "I like my work at the city library." He had scoffed. He'd mocked her. He remembered her simple pilled cardigan. He'd told her she was an embarrassment. He had been given a queen, and he had treated her like a servant. Not because she was good at hiding, he finally agonizingly understood, but because he had the mind of a servant, one who could only recognize value when it was loud, glittering, and announced by others. He thought he was a shark in a world of minnows. But he had just been a loud, small-minded fool blind to the quiet, true greatness beside him. He hadn't just thought she was ordinary. He had been the ordinary one, and in her world, he was the one who, in the end, simply didn't fit in. And so Liam learned the hardest lesson of all: never ever judge a book by its cover. He thought he was marrying a simple librarian, but he had married a queen in disguise. He wanted power, but he was too blind to see he already had it. By chasing the glitter of Newport, he lost the gold that was waiting for him at home. Karma, as they say, has a way of paying every debt in full. What did you think of Emily's story? Was Liam's downfall deserved, or was he just a man caught in a world too big for him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. This is the kind of drama that happens in real life, even if it seems like a movie. If you love stories about karma, hidden identities, and a satisfying reckoning, then you have found the right channel. Please hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe and ring the bell. We have so many more stories to tell, and you won't want to miss a single one. Thank you for listening.